Hey, it's Christina Gobe with Waterstone Mortgage, and today joining me is Josh Barouh with Integra Insurance.
Thanks for having me, Christina.
Absolutely. I've worked with Josh for, how long has it been now?
10 years.
10 years. It's been a great 10 years.
Yeah, we've worked on a lot of clients together.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Josh has been so gracious to visit with us today and let me ask him some questions in regards to insurance. So I know a lot of people are asking, what should Houstonians be prepared for insurance premiums, whether it's your home or your auto after a storm like Harvey?
Yeah, Harvey was devastating to say the least. The good news for homeowners in Houston is that I don't expect home rates to jump dramatically because most of the damage was from the flooding, of course. So if you don't have flood insurance, that's certainly something to look into. I think what you're going to see for Houstonians in the wake of Hurricane Harvey is that auto rates are going to go up, I would say at least 10% annually. So expect that that's going to happen just because there were 600,000 or so cars that were total losses.
Yeah, I heard that, about 600,000.
And that's actually a reversal from what we've seen in the past. After Hurricane Ike hit, we saw a tremendous jump in the home insurance rates, and now it's the reverse. Now we're going to start to see a big jump in the automobile rates, but it's going to happen gradually because they can't take all of that rate all from one year to the next. The Texas Department of Insurance actually won't allow that.
Okay. So the other thing is now people are talking about flood maps potentially being redrawn. Have you heard anything about that?
So I have not heard anything about that yet. However, I do think that's going to happen. One thing that I do know for sure is that the National Flood Insurance Program is going to be raising rates, especially for houses that are located in flood zones that are not using elevation certificates. Okay. So FEMA recently sent out letters to homeowners in areas that were not using elevation certificates and said, hey, your rates are going to go up substantially unless you can provide us with an elevation certificate. So that's really important to know.
So what do you think for people that have had, they basically transfer grandfather into seller's current insurance policies that have flood? You know, like for instance, if I'm buying a house and the people there have a flood policy and I get to take advantage of their current policy, is that going to stay intact? Or
That should all stay intact. Right now, actually in Washington, the lawmakers are trying to extend the National Flood Insurance Program. This happens once every couple of years. What happens is they renew it for a specified period of time. They deliberate and take it down to the very end, and then they'll renew it eventually. At least we hope so. But yes, if you have a buyer in a situation where they can transfer the policy from the owner to the new buyer, sure, that works out perfectly.
Great. We've had a couple of those, and folks have been really fortunate to lock into some of those lower premiums.
Yep.
Being in Houston, what do you think is some of the top things to consider for a homeowner's policy? Like if I'm calling and looking for homeowner's insurance, what do I need to make sure is included in my binder or look at what the premiums are?
That's a great question. So obviously insurance premiums in Houston are quite a bit higher than they are in many parts of the country. Buyers always want a low price. Our society is driven that way. One thing to note, especially in Houston, to look at on your policy are the deductibles. So a wind hail deductible, especially when you start getting south of I-10, sometimes you see a higher deductible like 2 and 3% on wind, and that's the value of your house. So if you have a $200,000 house with a 3% wind and hail deductible, that's a $6,000 deductible. So that is really important to look at in Houston. But on top of that, you want to make sure that you have things like foundation water damage coverage, water backup coverage. Some policies have them, some don't. So it's very important that you talk with your agent and always ask a lot of questions.
Right. Well, I know as lenders, we can go up to 5% on a deductible. But if you thought, like you threw out $200,000, I mean, that's $10,000 before they even start being able to file a claim.
That's right. And a new roof costs $10,000 to $15,000. So it's important to know what you've got. Now, if you're comfortable with a large deductible, then that's great. But you just need to be armed with the knowledge to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, I think most commonly we see 1% to 2% is pretty standard.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay. What about in regards to I think you had mentioned some stuff about coastal counties, so there's other options now?
Yes, so in coastal counties, Galveston County, Chambers County, Brazoria County, especially for your clients, for example, in Pearland, they've traditionally had to use the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, TWIA. for their wind and hail, because insurance companies don't want to insure wind and hail down in those coastal counties. Traditionally, they've had to use TWIA. Now, TWIA is overextended and underfunded, and so the state is letting in insurance carriers, private insurance carriers, to handle the wind and hail. And there's private companies out there that are actually including the wind and hail on their home insurance. So what that's doing is that's making the wind and hail coverage more affordable. So if you've got a second home or even a primary house in a coastal county like Galveston County, you've got other options now to help reduce the cost of your wind and hail coverage.
So that competition has kind of made it a little bit more affordable for
Absolutely.
people. Awesome. Well, and then in terms of shopping for an insurance agent, I know that there's a difference between having a broker who maybe represents a few different options or companies versus a captive agent that maybe is just with one agency.
Correct.
Can you kind of explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I was actually a captive agent for 13 years with a top 5 brand, insurance brand. Captive agent would be, for example, a Farmer's agent, a State Farm, Allstate agent, and independent agent like myself. We represent, like you said, a multitude of different insurance carriers. And so the biggest difference is that a captive agent works for that company. An independent agent like myself works for my client because I'm not tied to any one particular company. So my goal is to find them the very best coverage at the very best cost year after year. And that's why I made the decision that I did to go independent, so that when one company did not want to be in a market like Houston, I would be able to take my clients to a company that could provide the same great coverage, but at a much more reasonable cost because they have an appetite and they want to be here.
Right, so like in situations like after Ike, there were companies that were basically pricing themselves out of the market.
Correct.
So if you were a captive agent with them, then you essentially wouldn't have any options for those clients.
That's exactly right. And you would be asked to sell on value because that's what you can provide, whereas an independent agent like myself has, say, 15 or 20 different options, and you're not going to sacrifice the coverage, and you're not going to be able to find a better price.
And in situations like, I hear this a lot, like some insurance providers are not going to cover for, what are the pipes that are now getting to their end of life? Galvanized pipes. Okay, we hear that a lot. So if there's one insurance provider that's not going to do that, then you would maybe have another option.
Correct.
Or knob and tube or...
Correct. So a lot of the houses that were built in the 70s in Houston, which there are a large number of houses, 60s, 70s, have this galvanized plumbing. And it's become a major problem for the insurance industry because here we are 40, 50 years later, and they're starting to get these pinhole leaks in them. And there's a lot of carriers that won't insure these galvanized pipes, but there are quite a few that still will. And so it's important as a consumer that you understand what your policy covers, if it covers that as well, because the last thing you want is to have a major water leak and have your insurance company tell you that it wasn't covered.
Well, and also that you're working with an insurance agent that you like, that can give you that directive and put you in the right place.
Correct. That's absolutely right, Christina.
Well, I really appreciate the time that you took with us. I know that you insure all over Texas. I lend all over Texas. Real quick, is there anything else that people should be thinking about from like Dallas Marketplace, Austin, San Antonio?
So the Dallas Marketplace is actually a little more difficult now than it was previously due to all of the hail that they've had. We've seen a lot of restrictions actually in that market, a lot of higher deductibles being thrown out in that market. So the DFW market should expect rate increases and just a little bit of a restriction on the home insurance side of things. Again, as an independent agent, we've got options available for that. Central Texas is actually holding steady, and that's where most of the insurance companies are focusing their money right now, is in Central Texas, because it's making them the most money.
Got it.
So
can't believe they're in for the business and profits.
Shocker.
Well, thank you for your time so much.
Yeah,
I love that we've worked together for 10 years and
Absolutely.
have a great partnership.
Yeah.
And anyway, if there's anything that you have questions on or Josh can help you, feel free to reach out. I'll make sure that y'all get connected.
Thanks so much.
Take care.